Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me today, I have a phenomenal young lady that had the pleasure of meeting it's been coming up about a year now.
Mhm.
Uh, and she is a woman of God. She is a woman of purpose. She's out here doing big things, putting her stamp out here to let people know about how to overcome and deal with adversities of life. And it all begins with having a foundational basis in God. She's doing some incredible things, and that she's going to share with us today. And she's taking some time out of her schedule, in fact, to do so, to share a little bit about her journey and some of the challenges that she's had to deal with. But as you can see, she's standing strong and tall and ready to just pour into other people and in hopes of inspiring and encouraging and uplifting. So without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you Miss Tanisha Prelo. Thank you, Tanisha, so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Joseph. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's interesting how you and I met. We initially met over social media,
Hmm.
just kind of by chance. I saw a post and connected with you, and then unknowingly, like the next day or two, I see you at a networking event, and I'm just like,
Yeah,
"Don't I know you from somewhere?"
yeah.
It
I'm
was like,
like,
"Yeah, you just met me online." It was just really interesting. You had your table set up with your book and everything, and like I said, we'll get a chance to dive into that. So it was really a pleasure meeting you and putting a real live face to it all. And of course, you blessed me with a copy of your book, and I immediately read it, and I didn't put it down until I finished it. And it was really a phenomenal piece of work, and just the creativity that you did in putting that together. I really enjoyed it. So. With that said, before we kind of jump into things and learning a little bit about you and your journey, I would like, of course, to give you an opportunity to share with our audience a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Where you from? And anything else that you'd like to just share to just kind of give them a taste of who Tanisha is all about. So, if you would, go ahead and share
definitely
that with us.
sure.
Hmm.
Okay. So I'm originally from the Dallas area. Grew up in Dallas, and then of course we moved to the Arlington area. Sort of junior high school. So I'll kind of say I'm familiar with both places, right? Anything with the Dallas Fort Worth area, a native of it. So just growing up, it was four of us. I was the oldest, the smallest, but the oldest. So I always had to just learn quickly on my feet as far as when it comes to helping out, with my siblings around the house or different things like that. Growing up, I've always had a love for a lot of various activities, but really it was more of writing, newspaper clubs and, reporting, broadcasting. That was always just an area that I liked and I've taken an interest to, but I never actually went into it right away. And so just going back into that background, graduating high school, I kind of had a choice of going to school for IT or, going and kind of in the education field. But my heart was definitely with technology. So I still had a interest and a love for writing, but I actually took the pathway, the career pathway of computer science. So that's just a little bit about me and my background, just where I'm from and even the career that I'm actually in now. So fast forward to today, I actually work for a brand company called Yum Brands. And so we are the brand company for KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut. I work in the e-commerce space. So everything that I do, I just love digital, any type of digital spaces. So, and I'll dive a little bit more into that later. But, that's just what I do, the e commerce, as well as own a company that I'll be able to share called Remnant Media Services. So that's where I'm at now and sort of where I'm from.
Okay, okay, that is awesome. Obviously, you got your hands in a lot of different things, and that's a very solid area of work to be in. So it's always good to see someone like yourself doing that type of thing, and you've obviously expanded it into your other works that you're doing with your book and just projects that I've had the opportunity to follow you on social media that you've been affiliated with. So it's great
Mm.
stuff how you can use those. And I think, just even to add the element of God into it, he can sometimes has a way, and I'm sure you've experienced this, where he can lead us, initially what starts off as a career path and then
Right.
begin to draw from what was a career and starts to make that connection between the career and your calling.
That's
And
right.
so that's where you're finding yourself transitioning into, and again, just doing some wonderful and amazing things with that. And as you said, we're going to get a chance to dig into that a little bit further as we move along through the show. So that's great to hear. So just a little bit more. I do want to dig in a little bit more about your
Mhm.
background. Of course, you've shared, of course, where you were from, and and that you're the oldest in your family. So I believe that when we talk about journeys,
Mhm.
it's we would be doing it a disservice if we didn't talk about sort of those foundational beginnings of the journey. And so I would like to explore a little bit more about what it was like, I guess, for you growing up, starting out in Dallas, and then, of course, eventually moving into the Arlington area. When you reflect back on that time, what was it like in terms of, fond memories that come to mind? What was it like in terms of if there was any specific challenges that may have arisen that you had to deal with? Just kind of give us a little bit more insight about what made you be the person that you've become, your love for writing, where did that come from,
Mhm.
and things of that, and even ultimately your love for computers and technology, all of those things. I believe that there's something, an event, a person, a circumstance that sort of triggers those things. So please elaborate a little bit more for us about the upbringing and what that life was like for you.
Definitely. Just sort of thinking back, to those times. I would say one thing that I've always held on to is the element of journaling. Journaling was always pretty big for me. So if you have any big life events or something that happens or any type of adversity, one of the things that would help me is to just journal and write about what I was going through. And I think that's what helped actually with that passion for writing. It's almost like it was something that's been in me, right? And so it came natural. And it just reminds me of the Bible verse that says that God has treasure in our earthen vessels. So, again, one of those treasures for me may have been writing. And but then, as you stated, if you go through trauma or if you're dealing with something that is just very hard to deal with, um, as a child and even a teenager, the way that I was able to overcome a lot of what was on my mind was through writing. So a lot of my pain, I guess you'll say, I will put it on paper. That's one thing that I definitely like to do. But I just thinking about some of the foundational things that I went through. I had a time, I would say, with just a lot of confidence. You have the ability to do a lot of things, but because of not having that affirmation, I would say, or people being able to affirm you or show you, right, the journey that you should take, you begin to go down a different journey that God never intended for you to go down. And that was more of my story. It's like I'm trying to get to wherever I'm supposed to go, but I've taken the wrong road. And along that road, there's been so many adversities. As far as I remember one incident in my early 20s, just that really stood out to me is a bad car accident. And, being out at a certain time that I shouldn't have, around people that I shouldn't have been around. And I just remember driving up a highway, 360, in the Arlington Grand Prairie area, and just completely blacked out and fell asleep. And my
Mm.
car flipped off the highway. And when I woke up, I'm being care flighted to the hospital. And that was a very trying time for me because I didn't know how I was going to make it past, that particular scenario. I had just started a new job, actually trying to enter into the IT field. And but then at the same time, I'm on this road or this journey that I should never been on. And I think that's always been the case for me. It's almost like the Matrix movie, I guess you say, where you have the red pill or the blue pill. I was always the person that would opt to take the wrong pill and the wrong journey in life. And so it caused a lot of adversity. A lot of things that I could have avoided, I didn't. I actually walked into, I feel like, what you would call the mud holes or the pit that the enemy laid out for me. So just thinking about all of those different times, one of the things that got me through was writing, and again, just pouring out, that pain on paper, so to speak.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I appreciate your transparency and sharing just what you've started off with here at the top of the show. and I think we can all relate to that if we're being transparent as well and honest. Like I said, certain decisions that we've made, we knew going in, and that wasn't the crowd I was supposed to be with. That wasn't the time out I was supposed to be out at.
Mhm.
That wasn't the place I was supposed to be going to. And then things happen. And sometimes we can look at those moments in the moment and think, that this was some sort of, punishment, if you will, for making the poor decision. But one of the things, again, that you learn for those of us who understand the importance of being in a relationship with God and understanding how He works is that He can take what may appear on the surface to be, not so good decisions or, not so good choices or judgments. But He can take that and turn it into a learning experience for us, a learning opportunity. I mean, it would have easily, just with you sharing, hey, I black out, my car flips all over the place, immediately you poll 100 people, at least half of them are going to say she doesn't make that. She doesn't
Mhm.
make it, or if she does make it, she's never the same again. But we're
That's right.
looking at you, we're hearing you. I've of course met you in person, so just that incident alone, had you not shared it with me, again, this is an example of I don't look like what I've been through.
That's
you
right.
know, I know what it
Absolutely.
means to, I've had a moment like what you shared about blacking out while driving, and it was at a time where I was somewhere I shouldn't have been, at a time I shouldn't have been, had no business out at that point in time, and I fell asleep.
Mm,
In my case, I slammed into a light pole,
mm,
and by the grace of God, at that time I was notoriously bad about not wearing my seatbelt. But on
mm.
that night, something, I'm saying, I took it as something. I know what it is today now. God spoke to me
Right.
and said, "Put your seatbelt on." And for the
Mm,
first time in like a time when I rarely did it, put my seatbelt on that night, and it ended up being the thing that saved my life because I had my
wow.
seatbelt on when I normally wouldn't have, because I was too cool back then to wear my seatbelt.
Crazy
I didn't
that.
want that, but boom, here it was,
Wow.
and then, so God can maneuver things like that in your life and save you what should from what should have otherwise taken you out because he still had work for you. He still had work for you to do. He still had work for me to do. So you were supposed to go through that, as tragic and as horrible as that was, but it was an opportunity along with others that I'm sure you've experienced in life that he uses to develop us, to grow us, to transition us into where we are and where he's trying to show us where we have the potential to be because he created us for a special and unique and divine purpose to be used
That's right.
accordingly. So, again, I appreciate you sharing just even that snippet so early on in the story here of your journey because I think it's important for people to be aware that yeah, just because things start off a little rough for you, just because maybe you make some decisions that you say to yourself, yeah, I wish I would have done that differently, or I knew better, but I did it anyway. That doesn't have
Hmm.
to. It doesn't mean that it's the end of your story. That doesn't mean that this is how it all goes down. That there's still an opportunity for you to grow, for you to develop, for you to persevere through all of that, and still do great and impactful and wonderful works. Again, using the tools and the gifts that God has placed in you to utilize. So,
That's
thank you
right.
so thank you so much for sharing that. So, as we go a little bit further into your journey of life, and again, I say this all the time to people on the show and just in private conversations. You live long enough, and I probably got it from my mom and even my grandmother. You live long enough, you're going to go through some stuff, and some of the stuff that you go through, there are going to be some moments in time where it hits a little different, where that
Hmm.
weight is a little bit heavier than what you're normally able to lift, where that burden, that challenge, that adversity is a little bit more challenging, a little bit more complex. You may be a master in most cases of navigating through stuff, but every now and then you get hit like a ton of bricks, so to speak, with something. So if you would tell us about a time when you found yourself in that moment where you were actually doubting, I don't know if I'm gonna get through this. This is a little different. This is a little bit more weighty for me. I kind of got my hands thrown up in the air. Like, what am I going to do? I don't have that immediate fix, that immediate answer. Walk us through what that situation was like for you and how you were able to ultimately navigate your way through it.
Mm, that's really good. I have a lot of situations like that. But one that really comes to mind right now that was, I would say within the last few years, is when I started to actually write, let's say my first book. When I was asked to even write a book, as I stated earlier, was lacking confidence from even when I was a young child. So the thought of me writing a book was just, I mean, it was unheard of, you know? And so, um, it's like someone coming to you and telling you, I know you've authored a book before, but I come to you and say, hey, I need you to write this book. And immediately every lie that has ever been told to me or spoken over me came up in my mind. You're incapable. You're not able to do this. You're not going to make it. Everything that is designed to make someone quit is what came up in my mind. And I literally felt like I was, at a fork in the road. I knew that it was God's will for me to do what He was calling me to do. And I felt like I was being stretched to that next level, right? But at the same time, I had to pray. And I told God, I just remember during that whole process, if this is what you're calling me to do, to write a book, if it came from heaven, you have to give me the vision from heaven. I can't produce anything or do anything because one, I lack the confidence, in myself. And the only person at that time that I had confidence in was God. So it was a trying time for me. I would say warfare in my mind for me to get past the lies and everything that's been programmed in me. Just even from the past with bad relationships, especially as a young girl, some of the guys that I would date at that time, and they always, you know, I blame most of the time the culture, the generation, the music, all those things. So it was nothing for them to call me out of my name or say, you're dumb or you're not going to make it. So at the time, when you think that those words are not impacting you, they are. And it just reminds me, even today, I've been meditating on the Proverbs. And today it stood out even more. We hear the scripture, death and life are in the power of the tongue all the time. But today, I don't know, it kind of hit me different because I'm like, it really is. You can either speak death over somebody or life. And so all those words that were programmed over me actually came up. And my hand, I just threw up my hands. I'm like, I can't quite, I know I'm supposed to be doing something. I know I'm supposed to be going over this hump, but I don't know how to get over it. And that may actually sound like a small thing, to some people, but for people that have a purpose and a calling on their life, you'll begin to operate in like frustration. You're frustrated because you're supposed to be doing something greater than what you see, but you don't know how to get there. And that's how I felt. I said, this obstacle, and it was spiritual, right? But it was all in my mind. And so I had to, at that time, during writing, actually just go into prayer. And like I said, that was my prayer. God, if you called me to write this or do this, and if it came from heaven, you have to birth it through me. I don't want to do anything or write anything for anybody that was not going to be something that would bring forth healing and just even, encouragement and just begin to refresh other people. I always want something that I write to bless others. But I can't bless others if I lack confidence myself. And that was a hard obstacle for me to get past, and I feel much more confident about it, very, I feel better now, but it's the programming from past relationships, being in those horrible, even some situations to where you're fighting. I had a guy, we were fighting. It was very dysfunctional, but we thought it was normal, right? And so all of that program was still in me. And so when it's time for me to do something for God, I just shut down. I didn't have the confidence to do it.
Wow, wow, that's a phenomenal testimony that you just shared there, and again, I totally relate to what you're speaking of, not only from the author space, but just from the calling space in general, and basically what you, if anybody is confused about what this means, you basically just define what spiritual warfare is like.
Mm,
Like you said, you were kind of like, I know people might not think, well, there, when we get to this type of question, when I ask these type of questions, I'm sure there's people in the audience listening and they're like, they're waiting for this big, tragic moment. I was victimized by this, or I was,
yeah.
I overcame, I had this big major illness that almost took me out or something like that.
Mhm.
And they may minimize the trauma, the challenge, the adversity that comes with operating within your calling. Because see, when God places that on your heart, when He presents to you a vision, um, it's a huge undertaking, and until you've gone through it, that you
Mhm.
you you can only identify with what that feels like when you go through it, just this big responsibility, if you will, this big task that's been placed on you to do a great work that in many cases is a work that you've always had the skills. I mean, you talked about earlier that you've been
Mhm.
journaling since you were a kid. So you think, well, why would somebody who understood the value in journaling as a kid, why would they be afraid to write a book? You would think that that would just be
Yeah,
natural.
transition.
It would
Yeah.
just flow nicely. But then when you're in that moment and you're saying, I always know, like same thing. I've always been I didn't journal per se growing up, but I've always been good at writing. So, but
Mm.
then when you get in the moment to write a book, and it's like all of a sudden there's this, like you said, all these doubts, these all the stuff of why you can't do it starts
Mhm.
playing in your mind, and that's just spiritual warfare. That's the enemy letting you know that and it's a good and a bad thing. It's the enemy trying to distract you from doing the work that God is placing on you. But at the
Mm.
same time, it's a good thing that he's distracting you because it should be, as a believer, it's an indication to you that what you've been asked to do is necessary to do, and he wouldn't be messing with you if it wasn't if it wasn't that you were on track or on en route into doing something that is of great value, that is about pleasing God, that is about professing who he is and the messaging that he's wanting you to put out to other people. When the enemy is messing with you like that, while it doesn't feel good, while it's uncomfortable,
It does.
it's
Yeah.
also it's that sometimes we ask God, give me that confirmation. Sometimes the best confirmation is see who's messing with you.
Mm.
If stuff is starting to happen that and you can't explain why is all this craziness, why all of a sudden am I feeling this extra pressure, this extra negativity, and it could be coming from a variety of different places and a variety of different people, even people who are
Mhm.
should be your biggest supporters and encouragers could be the very ones that you're finding challenges and struggles with. And you're like, why is this happening in this most important time of my life when I need them to be rallying around me and cheering me on? Why am I going through this? It's because of the assignment that you've
That's
been
it.
given. You know, there are forces seen and unseen that are trying to disrupt you, that are trying to
Mm.
get you to not complete this, because if you complete this, you might actually bless somebody. You might actually lead somebody to God. You might actually cause somebody to throw aside worrying and stressing and frustration and anxiety in exchange for peace and joy and calm that only God can provide. You know,
Mm.
believe it or not, there's some people out here that don't want to see that happen. There's some forces that don't want to see you do that. And
That's
so
right.
it doesn't surprise me at all that you said that you were going through what you were going through and you were starting to play back some of the quote unquote, bad decisions or bad judgments that you had made or bad, experiences, that all of a sudden this stuff is just in your face to try to distract you. Even
Mhm.
as you were sharing about, the fact of being in relationships where you're, we're fighting and things like that were like normal, whether it be verbal or whether it even be physical. And I mean, like, again, I've had a chance to see you in person. You might be 5 feet,
Yeah. That's
you
right.
know, you know,
So you're
in
like, "Oh,
heels.
somebody oh,
You
yeah,
might be 5 feet. And I'm like, who is messing with Tanisha? She's a little bitty something. Why we try to fight somebody like that? For what? You couldn't be that mad to
right.
fight somebody like that. And again, I'm thinking about you. And I don't know who you might have been with in the past, but if they were somebody of size, why you having to even take on big guys like that to just
Exactly.
to for your own safety and protection. So, you know, it's so valuable for you to tell what you've shared so
Mhm.
far, because there are some people who, young ladies who are going through, relationships like that you've been through, but even more than that, just people in general who are doubting themselves about um, big things that are coming across their plate, that are coming into their hearts, and they're scared of it because they're like, how am I going to be able to do this? How am I going to be able to, I don't have this skill. I don't have this talent. But God is not going to place a vision on your heart. He's not going to bring that your way only for it to be something that if you were to actually operate in faith and in obedience to move forward with it, that he's going to set you up for it to fail. He's giving it
That's
to you for a reason. He has that assignment for all of us. Yours might not be mine, mine not maybe yours, but we all have something that he's created us to do, to be of service, to pour into the lives of others. And in the midst of doing that, again, we not only have an opportunity to be a blessing, but we also have an opportunity to be blessed.
that's
Just
right.
again, in the spirit of trusting and being obedient in what he's called for us to do. So, thank you so much for sharing that part of your journey. I think it's so impactful. But I want to go a little bit deeper with your book. If you
Okay.
would tell everybody about you. I just thought your book was so, uniquely written. And just the whole way you set it up. If you would kind of tell everybody, a little bit about, what inspired you to write the book. Give them the name and what inspired you to write the book. But then you did something unique about the book where you took what you do for a living, in essence. You made the connection of computer, the whole IT element of it, and you made that connection to basically what it means to have a relationship with God. And I just thought it was just a unique spin that I had never seen before, but it all made sense, and it was just intriguing, and it just kept you engaged. I mean, like I said, literally, I came home the day you gave me that book, and I can't even remember the last time I did that, where I got a
Hmm.
book. And I literally sat down on my couch in the very room that you see me in right now, and I'm in here and I started reading a few pages, only intending to just get a little taste of it. And I kept
Right.
reading, and I kept reading, and I kept reading. And the next thing you know, I kept reading until I was finished. And then as soon as I finished, I messaged you on social media to say, this was really
Yeah, you
good.
did.
I mean, I was like that engaged into it. So tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind the book, and a little bit about what it's about, and kind of explain to the audience, for those who may not, of course, had opportunity to, to read your book or know about your book. Kind of share with them what that, once you finally got over the can I do it, and you actually making it happen. Kind of walk us through that and what the whole book is about.
Definitely. So the idea of the book came from our actually our pastor. He had became very sick with COVID. When we were on a lockdown, I want to say in 2021, he had COVID, and it was really bad. He was in a hospital for 10 days, and we didn't think he was going to make it. And I remember, we had our group of, our prayer team always praying for him, around the clock and just for different things, right? Even other people that were sick at that time. And so he made it through by the grace of God. And he was on a limb in a prayer, so it was a miracle. But I remember when he came out, he began to talk to me about how God, the body of Christ, is what we always hear about. How the body of Christ is, he said, I saw a vision. It's like the body of Christ is like a computer network. And I was like, okay. And as he explained it, immediately I'm like, well, that makes sense because I worked at the time. I was working with like vulnerabilities, managing vulnerabilities and finding viruses on computers and on servers, right? And so I was like, oh, that makes sense. I mean, we're humans. We're three parts: body, soul, and spirit. And I immediately thought about the hardware, the software, CPU, memory, and it just made sense. And so when he said it, I didn't think any more about it. He was like, I know that you get it. He encouraged me to write the book about it. That's how we co-authored it. And that's when I was like, I get the revelation, but I don't think I'm supposed. I don't think now you're asking me to do something that's completely out of my comfort zone. Like write a book. But when I began to write it, all like you said earlier, all of my years of working in IT from 2008 up until now, and just everything that I've been doing, my whole journey, that seemed to be, as you mentioned earlier, like a curse or this is bad. It turned out to be good because every level, especially in the IT field that I've worked in, made sense when I began to really like just pour it into the, as far as the biblical aspect of it. And so that's how we came up with the title of God's Celestial Network. That basically just means God's heavenly network. God is in heaven, and a network is just like a computer network, right? And so, how does that work? Me, as I stated earlier, I went off journey. I went off course. I went down a pathway, right, that I know God didn't call me to go. And so I always do this example with other people if I'm doing like public speaking or speaking to an audience, is that if you have a cell phone and you're at another location, if you try to connect that cell phone to your home Wi-Fi, I always ask the people in the audience, will it connect? And of course, everyone says no because, well, why won't your cell phone connect to your home Wi-Fi? And it's the same answer. Well, we're out of range. We're at a different place. And that's the same thing with God's Celestial Network. That's what really stood out to me is like we are like those devices, the cell phones. And through life, we went down the wrong pathway. We went through a different journey, right, that God didn't call us to. So we're just like those devices that went out of range. And so the whole concept is that we have to connect back to God, right? So, like any device that needs to connect back to its network, you got to bring it back to where it needs to be. And that's what it's about, bringing people back to their creator, back to God, understanding that you're a device, and even thinking about, like you stated earlier, with the spiritual warfare, a device can have viruses, a device can be hacked, a device can have the wrong code, which is the wrong words written on it. There are so many elements of IT that really merges with the biblical aspect. And that's something that is just my newfound love. And again, I had to get that confidence in it. But just thinking about it, looking at our world today, like technology, automation, a lot of that mirrors with the Bible. And it's just highlighting that element, especially for people that love technology. If they see that bridge across, I believe it's really going to be of a great interest, for this generation and even people older or younger, whomever. There's a target people that likes technology, and to hear that element of technology merge with the biblical principles, I think is a blessing. So that's how I kind of got in there with that.
Absolutely. And again, I love that. I mean, I just think it's just amazing that while you were, of course, you're part of your prayer team at your church, and your
Hmm.
pastor is sick and dealing with COVID, and we know how serious the elements of COVID was, and for him to get out of that situation, have his breakthrough of healing from that, but then not only to share what that revelation was for him, but to even want to partner with you to write a
Yeah, I
book. I
was
mean,
like,
that's not a normal everyday thing that a
mhm,
pastor. We know there are many pastors who write books, but
right.
it's usually not the norm that you see a pastor decide that they want to partake in the writing of a book, and then they partner with a member of the church.
Hmm.
This is one of my people on the prayer team, and of all the people that he could have picked to
Right.
quote unquote partner with, it was on his heart to pick you. And I don't even know if he ultimately, you know, said to you, why you? I mean, I know he shared it with you, but did he ever tell you like
Well,
what was it
it's
about you?
interesting.
Go ahead. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, I'm sorry. Yeah, we recently had a book signing in Atlanta in June. And when I went on stage, I was just talking to the audience. And I remember telling them that when he asked me to help him, I'm like, what? Exactly, how you were. But when he came up to speak, he said, the reason I chose her is because I knew that she thought she couldn't do it. And he said, I
Mm,
wanted somebody that felt like they could not do it so that they can learn to depend on God for him to do it through them. But if he had to chose somebody that, oh yeah, I can do it. This is, I do this all the time. That's not the person for the job because they would be overconfident and not go through the process of learning to rely on God and allow him to pour through them. And so it was about building out that confidence and showing, me just, hey, you can go much further. Don't settle really for mediocrity, right? Don't stay in
hmm.
your comfort zone. There's more that you can be doing that has to be pulled out.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And again, it's just another testimony of how God will use people that you least expect to
Yeah.
inspire you to do things that you never thought about doing. Because just as you shared with your story about, I mean, you weren't in that before that time comes about. You weren't sitting around saying, I would love to write a book someday. As much as you loved writing and
Right.
journaling, that was not on your bucket list of, I want to write a book. That's what I'm
Yeah.
aspiring to do. You're doing your IT thing, and yeah, I
And I was
journal.
blogging, I have a blog site,
Yeah.
but that's about it. I'm just like, I'm a
Yes.
blogger.
I'm in a blog. I'm in the author space. I'm not doing that. But then
Oh no.
here's
Yeah.
this connection from at least even though you knew who your pastor was, you still, as we shared just now, that's not normal for pastors
Hmm.
to reach out to someone in their congregation. If they by chance were to reach out to someone in their congregation, it's usually going to be someone who does this,
That's
not
right.
someone who never done it, never thought about doing it. So again, why you? And
That's
so in
right.
sharing that story, that's just so powerful. But again, I can't treat that as a thing that just happened by accident. I can't take it as something that even if it was just on him personally, I do it. God, I
Yeah.
believe God spoke to him and through him to set up a situation where you would be able to be used by God through your pastor. Um, God already knew what you had in you, not just from the writing perspective, but just the fact that you're on a prayer team. Because
Hmm.
we've kind of kind of grazed over that, but
Yeah.
just anybody who's a part of the prayer ministry in a church, um, understanding what that means, what that's like, to pray for your pastor and pray for the
Hmm.
leadership and pray for the congregation, because there are many of us who we show up to our respective churches, and we get our good worship on and get our word, and we go
Hmm.
home. And when we may even pray, but we may only pray for our immediate families.
That's right.
Whereas with a prayer team, a for real prayer team, partner is praying for everybody.
That's right.
And your prayers are going on ongoing throughout the every day, throughout the week, and even and on Sundays. So
Hmm.
it's a different vibe. So I believe God, again, in His identification of who's to be that ideal person. I think that kind of comes into play as well. Just, you are a praying woman. You were already having that connection with God, already knowing what it meant to lean into God and to call on Him for strength and for encouragement and for support and all those things. So for you to get hit with this assignment, that, yeah, it was a surprise to you, but
Yeah.
you
It
were
was.
but you were going to be okay because of just your prayer life, just because of
Hmm.
your relationship was going to make it okay. Because you immediately, as you said earlier, when the book finally became a thing, that, okay, I'm going to write a book. Well, what did you do? You immediately went into prayer and said, okay, God, well, if you want me to write this book that I've never done before, I'm going to need you to,
Yeah.
I'm going to need you on this. I'm going to need you to speak this thing into me. I'm going to need you to give me what I have to have in order to put together a product that is not just, because, and even with the writing, that was something I know I encountered with the writing, was that when I came to the point of wanting to write the book, even though that wasn't something that was initially on my plate to do, I did want it. It was important that it was special. It was important that it was done right. I just didn't want to just write a book just to say I wrote a book. Because there's a lot of people out here who are authors, but they just wrote the book just to write the book. And it's funny
Right.
now when I see other people's books, ever since I've written mine, I can actually tell when somebody just wrote a book
That's
versus
right.
they put some time in. Like when I read your book, I could tell your heart was in it, your attention to
Hmm.
detail was in it. I could tell immediately. And it wasn't because I was trying to critique or anything like that, but it's little things that you pick up on that you can just sense right away. No, this
Hmm.
person, they put some thought into this. They didn't just slap something together, get a cover and slap on it and throw it on
Yeah.
Amazon
They
somewhere
do
to
that
sell.
all the time now. Yeah.
Yeah, people do
I'm
that all the
like,
time, you know. But that's not true, authorship. That's not true messaging to people, especially when you're talking about subjects like what you talked about, subjects like what I talk about. I mean, this is life changing stuff. This is something that if
hmm,
somebody reads this, this is a game changer for them. If they take
that's right.
just a snippet of what you shared in your book,
Hmm.
it could be the difference between life and death for some people.
That's
So
right.
it's really important that you're giving that thought and that consideration and that attention to detail as you did. And I'm just so
Hmm.
thankful that God used your pastor to connect with you and for you all to both collectively to put together that work. And now you have this wonderful book out, and you're traveling from city to city. You're doing virtual. You're doing a little bit of everything to just try to get that message out. And even that journey, for those who are not familiar with the author space, it takes time,
Yeah.
you don't just write the book and then a million copies are sold.
That's
That's just
right.
not how it works. It's a little bit
Yeah.
here, it's a little bit there. You're constantly looking for ways to let people know that you have something of value to share with them that's going to,
That's right.
again, be life changing. And you're just
Hmm.
having to still continue to trust, as I know you are, still leaning into God. Okay, God, open up some rooms, some platforms, some spaces and places where I can get this message out, because I know that there's more people that you want me to reach with this message. Show me
That's
what I need to
right.
do. Give me the discernment. Give me the direction. Give me the resources that's going to make it happen. So great stuff, and just a wonderful, wonderful work that you're doing. So
Thank you.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. So when you think about adversity, and again, whether it's something big like some of the stuff that you've shared, or even if it's just something just minor, but nevertheless, a thing of annoyance, something I got to deal with. If you would, please share with us, what is the process that you like to go through that just kind of helps you to process when faced with adversity? If it's, here we are Tuesday morning, adversity knocks on your door, it's in front of you. Here's something else I got to deal with, I got to work through. Tell us, what do you like to do that kind of helps you to, again, keep a level head, but also be able to process and work through whatever that challenge is that's before you?
I think what really helps is like the word you just said, having a process. And that's something that God has been dealing with me about lately, is ensuring that I have a life of discipline, so that when adversity comes, you have some people that when adversity knocks on their door, they don't have that disciplined life of reading a word or praying or even, just being in the presence of God. So when that adversity comes, they really don't know which way to run. They're trying to hurry up and send up a prayer, or they're trying to find somebody to pray for them. But if you're already doing what God has called you to do, as far as I wake up in the morning, you know, this is my prayer time, this is my reading time. You're dedicating that extra time in the day over to God so that He can direct your paths. Therefore, when that adversity comes, you know, you're more calm and level headed. I've had a lot of even over the last year monkey wrenches, I'll say, and I've turned to God and I'm like, okay, there was one situation where I'm like, I feel very brokenhearted. I have a lot of grief, on the inside, and it's kind of like what you said, where people that you would think would be cheering for you, but they're the ones that actually kick up their heel against you. Well, then how do you deal with that adversity? And in my case, it's just thanking God that I already had a disciplined life of praying and fasting and seeking God. So when that adversity came, I enter into that time of prayer. For some people, if they need to cry, then you have to go through that phase of crying. But just knowing that in spite of it all, you have to keep going. And so I remember like when I was going through something, I think it was last year, and I was praying about it, and I'm like, what's going on? And I heard God tell me, keep going, keep going. And I'm like, how can I keep going? This seems like such a hard issue, but He told me to keep going. And that's the I guess the same definition of perseverance or endurance. Our endurance and our strength is built up through our long time with God, your time of prayer, your time of reading your word, really being in the presence of God. That's where your strength is built up. So when that adversity comes, you have that strength in you to pull from to overcome it. And that's what's been working for me.
I love that. I love that. And like you said, the discipline piece is so important. And just, it's two parts. One, discipline comes into play in terms of the pre-preparation. In other words, we don't wait for the storm to get here and then
That's right.
start praying. They'll still start asking, could you pray for me? Can I still trying to figure it out then?
Hmm.
You have to be disciplined, as you stated, to have a regimen, if you will, a routine of I have time set aside for prayer. I have time set aside to get into God's word. I have time set aside to just um, meditate on His word and
Hmm.
actually apply it, to put it into practice, so that when the storm does hit, I'm again, I can withstand the hit.
That's
I
right.
can take it. It doesn't just totally floor me. I can take that hit, and then I can know what to do next to process through that situation after I've had, of course, my moment to release whatever, human
Hmm.
emotion, because I am still human. So as
That's
you
right.
just talked about a moment ago, sometimes I got to let some tears out. Sometimes I got
Hmm.
to, I may have to scream real loud. Sometimes I got to,
Yes.
sometimes I got to stomp my feet a little bit, something,
Mhm.
to just let off that initial steam. But then once I've done that, then I can, I've cleared myself, I've purged myself of that. Then now I can hear God's direction. I can remember and reflect back on His word, and I can go into prayer with a clear and level head, and not only be able to say what I need to say, but then also be able to receive what His response is to that prayer. So I know
Yes.
what to do and how to move forward accordingly. And then there's just the discipline in general, where as we're learning, this is where the application process comes in. If I'm reading God's word and I'm understanding what it says, it's not about do's and don'ts as much as it's about mindset and lifestyle. You know,
Mhm.
part of that discipline involves me learning over time to just not put myself in situations and circumstances unnecessarily that
Mhm.
create adversity and challenges. You know,
That's right.
some of the stuff that, as much as I love to blame the devil every time something wrong goes on, sometimes the accountability falls on me. You had
Mhm.
we talked about that earlier in the show. I had no business being there. I had no
Yes.
business saying that. I had no
Mhm.
business doing that. I had no business thinking that, because I did or said or thought, I created this situation.
Right.
You
You
know,
reap yourself. Yeah.
I reaped what I sowed. Now,
Mhm.
the beauty, of course, again, because of who I serve, because of who I'm in relationship with, even when I do the silly, idiotic, I knew better, in advance not to do it or say it, I still serve a God who doesn't hold it against me. He
That's
says,
right.
okay, you slipped up, you messed up, but let's use this opportunity as a chance to make you better, to build upon, to strengthen you.
Mhm.
I'll do that for you. I'm not like, and as I'm doing it for you, it's not that I'm condoning the behavior. It's not that I'm condoning the thoughts or the words or what have you, but I'm not going to let it destroy you. And I
That's
don't
right.
want you to sit here and beat yourself up about it. You made a mistake. You're not perfect. I didn't make you to be perfect. I'm the only perfect one here, but I can perfect you. We can work through this. We can use this as an opportunity to learn and build from. And when you have somebody in your corner that does that for you, that's not judging you, that won't just kick you to the curb the minute you mess up, like some of our friends and family does,
Right. Right.
when we don't meet their expectations, or when we fall short, we make a mistake, you ready to cut us off. Yeah, I don't want to talk to you no more. I don't want nothing to do with you anymore, or whatever. God doesn't do that to you.
That's right.
He's loving you unconditionally, and thus the key word, unconditionally. You can't mess up too much to get him to turn his back on you. As long
Mhm.
as you're there, he's there, and he's gonna dust you off and work that thing out with you, and in the end, you're gonna be better and stronger for it. And that's what you got to love about God, and just love that relationship, and that comfort that you get with Him, that protection that you get with Him. So that's great stuff. So, Tanisha, if you had a chance to speak to the younger version of you, younger Tanisha, somebody that maybe was like who you were like. Maybe they're going through some of those same things right now. They're struggling with making the right choices, right decisions, and even if they have made some bad decisions, they're sitting there beating themselves up about it. They're feeling stuck. They're feeling like there's no way to overcome it, that they've messed up and they've ruined everything, and there's no redemption, there's no opportunity to bounce back and overcome. What would be your words of encouragement and to offer to somebody that's in that space right now, or they're just kind of confused, just trying to figure it all out, to be able to just work through those difficult and challenging times, even if it's self-inflicted,
Mhm.
to be a better version of themselves and to operate in the space in which God created them to be? What would be those words of advice and wisdom that you would share?
Definitely. The main thing that I would definitely speak to my old self about, as well as young people that may have gone down that same road, is about their identity. And I would begin to speak to them about not who they are at that time, but who they have the potential to be. And see, you begin to see that in a lot of people, even with myself. You have a great potential in you, but your identity is attacked by the enemy. And so I would speak to them, not speaking down to what they're doing and where they're at. None of that matters to me. It's about the potential of where you can be. You can come out of your scenario. You can come out of the adversity that you're in, but it takes again connecting back to God and allowing Him to direct your path. And that's my answer for the young me, young men, young women, even older people that have gone completely off course. They have to get back on a pathway back to God. And my answer to them would be, yeah, or the thing that I would address most importantly in their lives is their identity. Is your identity. Your identity must be founded and rooted in Christ. And I
Mm-hmm.
can speak to that from just me, again, being younger, lacking confidence, didn't know who I was. I took on every identity of every person that was on TV, that was, on even as a young kid, cartoon characters, because I was looking for myself in a place where I wasn't supposed to be, you know. And so that's the part that I would definitely begin to minister to them about who they are, who they're called to be, who they have the potential to be, and how their identity can be found again.
Love that. Love that. And I don't know if you notice the title of our show today. It's temporarily disconnected, and that's what this is. When you
Oh,
go through your challenges, it's temporary. I mean, this again. This is not the end of the story. You know, we all fall short. We all slip up, even as believers. You know, I'm not going to sit here. You're listening to two believers right now, and we're not
mhm,
going to sit here and tell you that we get it right all the time, every day. We're still building. We're still working. We're still
mhm,
growing. We're still developing. We're still trying to figure it out too. It's just that you know we're not what as you heard some people say. You know, I'm not what I used to be.
mhm.
You know, but there's still a bright future ahead of what I can still become. You know, and it's just we just understand now again our identity. We have more confidence and understanding about who God created us to be and what He has set the vision to be for us. You know, and once you get that reality check and once you see it and believe it, I mean, it just gives you a clearer vision. You know, you hear different. You know,
Yes.
all of your senses are now opened up at another level. It's like an unlocking, if you will, because
Mhm.
now you're hearing God in its truest sense of the word, in its truest voice. And when I say that, it's not like it's going to necessarily be this thunderous roaring voice from the air. You know, Joseph, Tanisha, do this, that, but He speaks to us how He needs to speak to us in ways that we immediately know it's Him.
Mhm.
And you know, and as long as we stay open and receptive to that, there's nothing that we can't overcome. There's nothing that we can't bounce back from. Yeah, I made that mistake, but again, don't beat yourself down for that. Don't refuse to forgive yourself. You know, just acknowledge what it was, and you build from that. You grow from that. You develop from that.
Yes.
Everybody has shortcomings. I don't care who you are. You know, it's a part of life, but it's an opportunity, and that's what we have to treat it as. It's an opportunity to be better, to
Mhm.
do better, to you know, to just again open ourselves up to truly walking in our purpose and everything that God has created us to be. So that's great. I
Yeah.
think that's great words of wisdom for the younger you as well as anybody that's been is in that situation right now. I'm sure there's going to be listeners on this episode as well as just people abroad that you get a chance to meet and your different platforms and whatnot to share that message and they're going to be blessed by that because this is exactly what we all need to hear and to grow and develop from. So with that
That's right.
said, before I let you go, I do of course want to take an opportunity to celebrate you, to love on you, to affirm you. If you got anything that you'd like to share with us that you got work in the works right now, either that's actively going on or maybe something down the road coming soon that we need to know about and how we can connect with you, please share that with our audience.
I will. So, first, if anyone wants to just find out where I'm at on social media, I have Facebook, Instagram, all around. But if they type in Tanisha Writes, TANICIA, Writes, WRITES, that's going to take them to Instagram, Facebook, even my link tree. But thinking about the title of the show, which I didn't realize it was called Temporarily Disconnected. I do. I just want to talk about a little bit about the book that we're speaking about, right? Which is this book, this God's Celestial Network book. And they can actually find this on Audible, Amazon, even on my website, remnantpub.com. And this book, as stated, temporarily disconnected, is for people that know that they've been stuck or they are temporarily disconnected from God and they need to be reconnected to Him, back to their Creator so that they can find their identity and their purpose and know what they're called to do. So I definitely recommend it. Everyone that's in that space, or even people that they know that's in that place, to definitely get a copy of this book. We have it in ebook, every format. I'm trying to make sure I target every format because I know it's very important that people read it and not only read it, but apply it, that practical application and understand it. So definitely just want to share that. But what I have coming up, we've been working on a program the last year called Restored Identity. I did 2 or 3 events of it in person, public speaking and talking to people about their identity, pointing them about how their identity has been disjointed or disconnected from God, and how to get it back. But I am looking at doing that in a virtual space. I haven't done it virtually yet, so I'm looking to have a panel of people that have read the book that can give their own testimony about how their identity has been restored, what God has done for them. And I want to take that to a big virtual audience that we can reach many to really begin to pour into other people about having their identity restored, about plugging back into God, what we call God's celestial or heavenly network, because that's the whole goal of everything that we do. And again, I have a lot of projects coming up. I have books, a book right now that I'm writing called The Curse of the Inverted Soul. That's definitely going to be another game changer. I have a book, a free ebook right now. It's free for now, but I'm going to put a price on it in a few days. But it's called Honor, and it just talks to the culture. Like when we look around, we see a lot of the young people. It's just a loss of honor that we see. So that's something that I have out there as well. So I have a lot of projects, as I stated. Everything is on my link tree. It's on my social media, and I'm readily available through email and however people want to reach out to me just to connect and anything else.
That's wonderful. That's a beautiful thing that you got going on, and the upcoming projects. It sounds exciting, and I'm looking forward to just how God is just going to use you to be a blessing to others. I was going to ask you real quick with your first book, if I'm remembering correctly, didn't you just also come out with a was there like a supplemental guide that goes with it, like a little workbook or something like that?
Oh yeah, so we have the study guide on our Remnant Pub website as well. So I have the study guide to go with this God's Celestial Network book. Um, the Audible version, the ebook. Again, I may even do a journal and a course. I want to make sure I max out every opportunity to get the word across to people.
Awesome, awesome. See, I'm gonna have to tap into your IT skills because I'm not techie at all, but I do what I can.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I might have to reach out to you about some of this stuff, that
Hmm.
you're doing. But again, great works that you have both present and to come. Just blessing people all over the place. I know. Again, I was blessed in reading your book, and would definitely recommend it to anybody that's looking for a refresher, if you will, about what it means to get back connected to God, or even for those of us who are already connected to God, just
Hmm.
how can you strengthen that
That's right.
connection even further? Because sometimes it's about that. Let me just strengthen the connection even more than what it's already at. We can always grow. We can always develop. There's always room for such a thing to take place, and so we want to take full advantage of those opportunities to do so
Yes.
anytime that you can. And this is a very user friendly type of read.
It sure.
You will not be bored reading this book. This is not one of
Hmm.
those I read to try to go to sleep at night. You will stay engaged and you will be connected, and again, just the unique way that Tanisha put the book together just makes it that much more enjoyable of a read, and just again just re-emphasizing the importance of that relationship with God and in all aspects of your life. So with that said, Tanisha, thank you so much for
No
taking
problem.
time out to be with us today. It's good to again connect with you again, and look forward to seeing you in the near future at one of your events. So I can just benefit from more of just what you're doing. It's just a great work. And for those who've had an opportunity to listen to today's episode, if you've enjoyed the content that's been presented to you today, please subscribe, please share, please like, please comment. Don't keep this to yourself. This is a wonderful piece of work from a wonderful individual that you need to connect with. She's giving you all her social media handles and everything. Please, when you get done with this episode, connect with her,
Yes.
because and I promise you, you will be blessed, and you just never know. It's always good to collaborate with folks who are like minded and trying to do great works in terms of inspiring and encouraging others. So there could be collaboration and connection opportunities to just further expand upon all the great works that we're trying to do to be pleasing to God, and just to let Him know how much we value and appreciate the relationship of being with Him is, and what it means to us so much. So, with that said, always remember, here at the Blessings at the Street podcast, this is the place where your glory is your story. This is the place where your relationships are relevant, where your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and I thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, please take care of yourselves. God bless. Keep fighting that good fight, and just know that is too big for God to handle. He is always there by our sides, ready to receive us with open arms and just to pour into us in ways that only He can. So please take care of yourself and keep that in mind as you go through your various adversities and challenges of life. Until next time, I'll see you then.